I could feel something was off, but I never imagined it would hit me like this. Madison, my wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had been hiding something from me, something huge. And today, everything came crashing down. It all started when I grabbed her phone, just by chance, while she was in the shower. The usual gut feeling that gnawed at me flared up again. I hadn't been suspicious at first, but lately, something was wrong. The way she'd pull away when I'd touch her, the secretive late-night phone calls that she'd quickly end when I entered the room. A marriage built on trust had slowly begun to feel like a ticking time bomb. And then I saw it. A message that shattered everything. The words burned into my mind. I want you. Get rid of that cuckold today. I froze. My hands went clammy as the phone slipped from my grip, but I immediately grabbed it again. My heart was racing, thundering in my chest. This couldn't be real. But it was. The words were there, clear as day, mocking me. Cuckold. She called me that. Madison, my wife, had been playing me for months, maybe even years. The very idea of it felt like a slap in the face, but the truth was right there in front of me. I was nothing more than a joke to her, an obstacle. She was sleeping with someone else. Someone who had more of her attention, more of her affection, someone she clearly wanted to replace me for. I didn't know what to feel, anger, betrayal, humiliation, or something else entirely. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this slide. I had to confront her, and I had to do it now. I stormed into the bathroom just as she finished drying off, trying to act normal, like nothing was wrong. She looked at me, then quickly at the phone in my hand. Panic flashed across her face, but she masked it in a second. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to feign innocence. But the coldness in her eyes gave it away. She knew. She had no idea how much I'd already seen. I didn't waste time. I threw her phone down on the counter and let the screen face up. The message was still open, taunting her. Her body stiffened as her gaze locked on the screen. Her confidence wavered, and I could see her heart rate spike. She tried to laugh it off. "Ethan, this is ridiculous. You're overreacting." "That's not." I didn't want to hear her lies anymore. Not one more word. "Stop. Don't lie to me, Madison." I saw everything. Her face turned pale. She tried to move past me, to act like nothing was wrong, but I wasn't letting her off that easily. I grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her back. I needed her to face me, to own what she had done. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice shaking, but not from fear, from fury. "Who is the guy you've been seeing behind my back?" She stammered, her face flushed with guilt. "Ethan, please, listen to me. It's not what you think." I cut her off, my anger growing with every passing second. "Don't lie. You've been sneaking around, using me, and you think you can just get away with it?" Her eyes welled up with tears, but I wasn't buying it. "I don't care about your excuses anymore, Madison. I want the truth. Now." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. That's when I heard a noise, a knock at the door. My heart dropped. I knew who it was. The man she'd been cheating on me with. He was here. I turned to Madison, a dark satisfaction welling up inside me. "Your lover's here, isn't he? Go ahead. Let him in." Her face drained of color as she realized there was no escape. The game was over. It was time for her to face the consequences of her lies. The door swung open, and there he was, the guy? Chad. Tall. Fit. His cocky smile never reached his eyes when he saw me standing there, holding the bat. I didn't need to say anything. The fear in his eyes said everything. He stepped forward, but I wasn't letting him get close. This wasn't a negotiation. I had no interest in talking it out, like some melodramatic TV show. I just wanted to make sure they knew. I was in control now. "Nice to meet you, Chad," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm Ethan, the cuckold." His eyes widened in realization. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. This was no longer about Madison. This was about revenge, about taking back the power she'd stolen from me. The tension in the air was thick, like a fog that refused to lift. Chad, the man who'd been sneaking behind my back with my wife, stood there in the doorway, his arrogant smile from earlier now replaced with pure panic. Madison, still trembling, was trying her best to act like nothing was happening, but we both knew the truth. The gig was up. I stepped forward, feeling the weight of the bat in my hand. I didn't want to use it, not yet. But I needed them both to understand that I wasn't some passive, naive fool anymore. This wasn't a moment for apologies, for excuses. It was a moment for raw truth. "Do you know what the real betrayal is, Madison?" I said, my voice low, controlled. It's not just the affair. It's that you thought I wouldn't find out. You thought I was too weak to do anything about it. Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the tears of someone who was genuinely sorry. They were the tears of a woman who was caught, who was trying to salvage whatever she could from the wreckage she'd created. It sickened me. Chad cleared his throat, stepping slightly into the room, trying to break the silence. Look, man, I didn't know you were gonna react like this, he said, his voice shaky. I didn't mean to. I raised my hand, silencing him. Don't say another word. This isn't your apology tour. This is my house, and you're lucky you're not leaving here with a broken leg. Madison's eyes widened at the threat, but she didn't dare speak. I turned to her, watching her closely, noting every little shift in her posture, every false attempt to look innocent. You think you can just go out there, sleep with some guy, and then come home like nothing happened? You think I'm just supposed to act like everything is fine? I continued, my voice rising now. I was no longer trying to contain the anger that had been simmering inside me. Well, guess what? You've got another thing coming. This marriage is over. I'm done. I'm done being your doormat, your punching bag. Madison opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. She knew it was too late. She knew I wasn't the same man I was when I walked into this house earlier today. You've destroyed everything, Madison, I said, taking a step toward her. Everything we built, everything we had, it's gone. And now, here you are, begging me to listen to your excuses, to forgive you. But here's the truth. You don't deserve forgiveness. Chad shifted uncomfortably behind me, looking like a deer caught in headlights. I turned my head slightly, just enough for him to know I was speaking directly to him now. And you, Chad, you're no better. You think you've won? You think she's going to leave me and run to you? You're nothing but a placeholder. You're just a convenient distraction. The moment she's done with you, she'll move on to the next one. You were the fool. I could see the shock in his eyes, the realization dawning on him that maybe this wasn't just some casual fling for Madison. No, it was about power. It was about control. And in this moment, I had both. Madison tried to make a move toward me, probably thinking that her typical manipulation would work. Ethan, please. You don't understand. I was lonely. I just... Save it. I snapped, cutting her off. Do you think I care about your feelings right now? Do you really think I care why you did it? You crossed a line, and now you have to face the consequences. For a moment, there was silence. No one said a word. Madison stood frozen, looking at me like I was a complete stranger. Chad, still standing in the doorway, looked around nervously, as if expecting me to suddenly snap. I could see the fear in both of their eyes. Fear that maybe I wasn't bluffing. Fear that they had underestimated me. And in that moment, I realized something important. They weren't the ones who had the power in this room. I did. Finally, I dropped the bat to the ground with a loud thud. The tension in the room didn't lessen, though. It felt like the air itself was thick with betrayal, with loss, with everything that had been broken. I want you both out of my house. Now, I said coldly. Madison opened her mouth, probably to beg for a chance to talk, but I couldn't bear to hear her voice anymore. I didn't want her to speak. I didn't want any more lies or empty promises. I just wanted her gone. Chad seemed to snap out of his shock and started to back away toward the door. Yeah, we'll go. This isn't over, Ethan, he said, his voice barely audible, but there was a hint of anger there. Don't worry, it's over, I said, my voice firm. The only thing left is to pick up the pieces of what you've destroyed. I watched them leave, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Strength. The strength to walk away. The strength to reclaim my life. And the strength to finally move on. The door slammed shut behind them. And just like that, my world was different. In the span of an hour, everything I thought I knew, everything I'd built with Madison, had been ripped away. All that was left was a cold silence, punctuated only by the sound of my own thoughts. I stood in the center of the room, trying to process it all, but I couldn't. My mind was racing, every thought crashing into the next one. It was hard to make sense of anything anymore. The betrayal, the lies, the sheer audacity of it all. It was too much to comprehend in one sitting. I walked slowly over to the kitchen counter, my fingers tracing the edge of the countertop, as if I could hold on to something solid. But there was nothing. The house that had once felt like home now felt foreign, empty. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me, but there was no room for grief. Not yet. My mind kept going back to the message I had found. The message from Chad, telling Madison to get rid of me. I couldn't get the words out of my head. I want you. Get rid of that cuckold today. It echoed in my mind like a drumbeat, reminding me of how insignificant I had been to her, how disposable. And I could feel the sting of humiliation all over again. But this time, I wasn't going to wallow in it. I wasn't going to let her or him have that power over me. I paced back and forth, trying to shake the anger, trying to figure out what my next step would be. Part of me wanted to call her, yell at her, make her feel as small as I did. Another part of me just wanted to forget her completely, to walk away and never look back. But there was still that one nagging question. Why? What had happened to the woman I married? The woman who used to be kind, loving, and considerate? I couldn't even recognize her anymore. The Madison I knew was gone, replaced by this cold, calculating version who had been lying to me for months, maybe years. She had turned our marriage into a game, one where I was the fool. I grabbed my phone and stared at it for a moment. I thought about texting her, confronting her again, demanding answers, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. She'd just try to manipulate me again, like she always did. The truth was, there was no point in talking to her. I didn't need her to explain herself anymore. I didn't need her apologies or her excuses. I needed closure, and I needed to find it on my own, without her. The thought of her smug face, of the way she had looked at me as if I was the one in the wrong, made my blood boil. But I refused to let it consume me. I couldn't. I had to keep it together. I had to take control, because if I didn't, I knew I'd lose myself in the anger and the hurt. I decided to take a walk. I needed space, space to clear my head, space to breathe. I grabbed my jacket and headed out the door, slamming it behind me. The cold night air hit my face, but I didn't feel it. I was numb. I walked for what felt like hours, letting the city's noise wash over me as I tried to push everything out of my mind. But the thoughts kept creeping back in. The betrayal, the lies, Madison's laughter in my face as she had deceived me, and the thought that maybe, just maybe, she'd been planning this for a long time. I wanted to scream, but I held it in. I wasn't going to let her have that satisfaction. As I walked, I found myself standing in front of the bar we used to frequent, the one where I knew she'd met Chad. The thought of it made my stomach churn. I had been blind, so blind, to everything that had been going on under my nose. I stood there for a long time, staring at the lights of the bar, my thoughts a tangled mess. Then it hit me. This was it. This was the moment where everything changed. I wasn't going to beg for her back. I wasn't going to try to fix something that was already broken. I was going to let go. For good. I took a deep breath and turned away from the bar, walking in the opposite direction. I didn't need closure from her. I didn't need anything from Madison anymore. I just needed to move on, to find a way to rebuild, even if I didn't know what that looked like yet. And as I walked into the night, I realized something. I was stronger than I had ever been before. And no one, not Madison, not Chad, not anyone, could take that away from me. It's funny how quickly life changes. 1 minute, everything feels familiar, secure, and then suddenly, it's all turned upside down. A week had passed since I found out about Madison and Chad. It felt like a lifetime. The anger and betrayal still burned in my chest, but something had shifted inside me. I wasn't that broken man anymore, desperately trying to salvage a relationship that was beyond saving. No, now I was determined to take control, to reclaim my life. I'd spent the past few days distancing myself, trying to clear my mind and focus on the next steps. I didn't want to sit around and wallow in self-pity. That was Madison's game, and I wasn't playing it anymore. Every hour I spent away from her, every minute I focused on something, anything, that didn't remind me of her, was a step toward healing. But healing didn't come easily. Every time I thought about her, my stomach twisted. I still remembered the cold, calculating look she'd given me that day. The way she didn't even seem sorry for what she'd done, like she'd moved on and expected me to do the same. The audacity, the nerve. I had reached out to a lawyer just to see what my options were, and it turned out there were more than I'd anticipated. Divorce wasn't just an option, it was an inevitability. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that staying married to someone who could betray me so completely wasn't just unhealthy, it was toxic. But then there was the matter of our house. Our life together, the one I had once thought was solid, had been built on a foundation of lies. How could I stay here, in this place, when it was nothing but a reminder of everything she had done? The thought of leaving was both liberating and terrifying. I spent the next few days sorting through things, packing up some of her clothes, throwing away old pictures, and deciding what to keep. I felt no attachment to any of it anymore. It was like all the love I'd felt for her had evaporated overnight, replaced with disgust and disbelief. But there were moments when I doubted myself. Moments when I wondered if I was making the right decision. Could I really walk away from everything we had? Was I being too harsh? After all, I had spent years building this life, this relationship. But then I remembered the words I'd read on her phone. The words that she had written about me behind my back. Get rid of that cuckold today. No, I wasn't being harsh. I was protecting myself. I was protecting my dignity, my self-worth. I deserved better than a woman who treated me like an option. A woman who would have me tossed aside the moment something better came along. That night, after a long day of packing and deciding what to do with our things, I stood at the window, looking out at the city below. The lights twinkled in the distance, but it all seemed so distant, so hollow. The life I'd once thought I had was now in ruins. But I wasn't broken. I wasn't done. Not yet. And that realization felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I had a choice now. A real choice. I could let Madison and her lies define me, or I could take back control. I could rebuild, start fresh, and become the man I had always wanted to be. A man who didn't take crap from anyone. A man who knew his worth. A man who, despite everything, still believed in himself. The next morning, I made a call to the lawyer again. I'm moving forward with the divorce, I said, my voice steady, sure of my decision. Let's make it happen. It felt strange, almost surreal, to make that call. But at the same time, there was a sense of finality that gave me a weird sense of peace. I had made the decision to let her go, and now I was going to move forward with my life, no matter how hard it would be. The days turned into weeks, and as I moved through the process, I found a new rhythm. It wasn't easy, divorce never is, but every day I was reminded that I was doing the right thing. I was reclaiming my life, piece by piece. There were times when I questioned if I would ever trust again, if I would ever feel love like I had with Madison. But that was the beauty of it all. I wasn't rushing into anything. I wasn't settling. And when the time came, I'd be ready to build something real, something solid, something worthy of me. The journey wasn't over, but I had taken the first step, and that was all that mattered. It had been 2 months since Madison and I parted ways. The divorce was moving forward smoothly, and with each passing day, I felt the weight of the situation lifting, but it wasn't without its challenges. Every now and then, I'd feel a pang of regret or wonder if I had made the right decision. But when I stopped to think about what I was truly walking away from, the answer was always clear. I wasn't walking away from the good times or the memories. I was walking away from the betrayal, from the lies, from the woman who had disrespected me at every turn. And with every step forward, I realized just how much strength I had. I wasn't the man who had blindly trusted her anymore. I had rediscovered who I was. The house was quiet now, far too quiet. It was a strange sensation to wake up in an empty bed every day, not hearing the sound of Madison in the next room, not seeing her face first thing in the morning. But I was adjusting. I was learning to live for myself again, to prioritize my own happiness and well-being. I decided it was time for a change, something to mark the beginning of this new chapter in my life. I went to the gym more often, something I had put off while in the marriage. I started eating better, focusing on my health and strength, both mentally and physically. I felt the old me slowly coming back, the confident, driven person I had been before I let Madison's manipulations consume me. One day, I was at the gym, lifting weights with a focus I hadn't had in years, when I noticed someone. A woman. She was standing by the weight machines, stretching, her eyes glancing toward me. Our eyes met, and for a second, it felt like a spark. But I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I wasn't about to rush into another relationship or get caught up in something that wasn't genuine. Still, it felt good. Good to know that I wasn't the same guy who had let his self-worth be defined by Madison. I didn't need anyone to complete me. I was enough on my own. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I was ready for another relationship. Not yet. But the idea of one day opening up again, of finding someone who truly valued me for who I was, started to feel possible. For the first time in months, I felt like I had options again. A few weeks later, I decided to do something else that would help me feel more grounded. I visited my parents. It had been a while since I'd seen them, and I realized I'd been so consumed with the divorce and the fallout from the betrayal that I had neglected the important relationships in my life. Sitting at the kitchen table with my mom and dad, I felt a sense of peace. They listened as I told them about everything that had happened, without judgment, just support. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was surrounded by people who cared about me unconditionally. It reminded me of how much I had been missing in my life while I was wrapped up in Madison's lies. After our visit, I decided to focus on what I could control. The divorce was in its final stages. The property and financial matters were being sorted out, and soon, I would have the freedom to live my life on my own terms. No more checking over my shoulder, no more wondering if I was being deceived. I spent the following months focusing on the things I'd neglected during my marriage. I started writing again, something I hadn't done in years. I'd always loved writing, but it had taken a back seat to the chaos of my personal life. Now, I found solace in putting my thoughts onto paper, expressing myself in ways I hadn't been able to before. As the weeks passed, I realized just how much I had grown. I wasn't the broken man who had been left in the dark. I was a new version of myself, someone who had learned from his mistakes and emerged stronger. I wasn't interested in playing the victim. I wasn't interested in being anyone's second choice. The future was uncertain, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I had faced the worst and come out the other side with my head held high. I was no longer defined by Madison's betrayal. I was defined by my ability to overcome it, to move forward. And as for her, she was no longer a part of my story. I had written a new chapter, one where I was in control, where my happiness wasn't dependent on anyone else. I was moving on, and I was doing it on my own terms. I realized now that the hardest thing wasn't the betrayal. The hardest thing was finding the strength to rebuild. But now that I had, nothing would stand in my way. The months following Madison's departure were a blur. On the surface, everything looked normal. I went about my daily routine, work, gym, eating better, writing. But underneath it all, I was still processing the wreckage of my past. I couldn't ignore it, couldn't bury it any longer. The anger and hurt weren't as raw as they had been in the beginning, but they still lingered, just beneath the surface. It was a Friday night when I got the message. My phone buzzed as I sat on the couch, flipping through random TV shows that didn't hold my attention. I picked it up, expecting a text from a friend or a colleague, but instead, it was from an unfamiliar number. "Ethan, it's Madison. We need to talk." I stared at the screen for a few moments. My heart didn't race, but it certainly didn't settle either. I hadn't heard from her since the day she walked out of the house. Since then, I had completely shut her out, blocking her on social media, changing my contact details so I didn't have to deal with her manipulative messages. But this was different. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to move on, to pretend that she didn't exist anymore. But I also knew this wasn't over. I wasn't going to let her come back and pull me into another emotional circus. I was stronger than that now. I didn't need her to close this chapter. I could do it on my own. I typed back a response, keeping my words short and to the point. "What do you want, Madison?" She replied almost immediately. "I need to explain myself. I owe you that much." I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it. Explain yourself? After everything? After months of lies, of deceiving me, of making me feel like I was the crazy one? She thought a simple explanation would make everything right? But even as anger bubbled inside me, I didn't respond with emotion. I didn't let her drag me back into her world of manipulation. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. No more begging for closure. No more trying to understand her. Still, there was a part of me that felt like I needed to hear her say the words, admit it, once and for all, that she had destroyed everything between us. And maybe, just maybe, that would allow me to truly move forward. "Fine," I typed back. "We can meet. But this is the last time. After that, I'm done for good." I hit send, not knowing what to expect next. It felt final. My mind raced with thoughts of what she might say, but I quickly shut them down. It didn't matter. It was all about moving on now, not what she had to offer. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop, somewhere public where there was no room for drama. When I arrived, I spotted her sitting at a table by the window. She looked the same, maybe even a little more put together than I remembered. Her makeup was flawless, her hair perfectly styled, but there was a new emptiness in her eyes. It was like she didn't even recognize the person sitting across from me. I took a seat without speaking, my hands resting on the table, staring straight ahead. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand to stop her. Don't, I said, my voice steady. I don't need your excuses. I don't need to hear about how sorry you are or how this time you'll change. It's too late for that. I'm done. The only thing I need from you is the truth. She flinched at my words, but didn't look away. It was clear she hadn't been expecting this response. She had probably hoped I'd sit there, begging her to come back. But I had long ago stopped being that man. I'm sorry, she said softly, almost hesitantly. I know I've hurt you. I was selfish. I wasn't thinking. I chuckled darkly. Selfish? You ruined my life, Madison. You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed everything we built together. And for what? So you could feel good about yourself? So you could find someone else to validate your existence. She looked down at her coffee cup, avoiding my gaze. I wasn't angry anymore, not the way I had been in the beginning. Now, I just felt indifferent. She wasn't worth my anger. She wasn't worth any more of my time. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, she continued, her voice breaking slightly. But I am truly sorry. And if there's anything I can do to make it right, please. No, I interrupted. Nothing you say can make this right. It's too late. And honestly, I'm glad you're out of my life. I'm better without you. I'm stronger. For the first time in the entire conversation, she looked up, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Maybe regret, maybe sorrow. But I didn't care. I wasn't looking for her validation anymore. You were never the problem, I said quietly. I was the one who allowed myself to stay in a toxic relationship. But I'm not doing that anymore. Not with you. Not with anyone. She didn't say anything else. She just nodded, as if accepting the finality in my voice. We sat in silence for a few moments, and then, without another word, I stood up and walked away. As I stepped out into the cold air, I felt lighter, like I had just closed a door that had been hanging open for far too long. I was free. I never expected that conversation with Madison to feel so anticlimactic. The final words exchanged, the small nod of acknowledgement, and then the weight of the silence. After all that had happened, after all the anger and the hurt, the meeting had ended in a quiet resignation. There was no closure, no redemption. And that, strangely enough, felt like a victory. I had walked away, but not just physically. I had walked away emotionally, mentally. I no longer needed her validation, her apologies, or her excuses. I was finally free. And as much as I had once believed that closing that chapter would somehow leave a void in my life, it didn't. There was no hole left behind. Instead, I felt a sense of clarity, of empowerment. I drove back home, the same house that had once felt suffocating, that had witnessed the downfall of everything I thought I knew. It didn't feel like home anymore. It didn't even feel like the place where I'd spent years of my life. The walls, the furniture, it was all just a reminder of a different time, a time I wasn't ready to revisit. So I packed up more of her things, pushing through the emotions as I cleared out the last remnants of our life together. Her clothes, her books, things I had once thought were precious to both of us. I found myself tossing most of it into boxes, not with anger, but with detachment. It wasn't about bitterness anymore. It was about letting go. The process of moving on wasn't immediate, but it was gradual, like shedding an old skin. Every day, I felt a little less of the man I had been. Every day, I became a little more of the man I wanted to be. The man who had lost so much, but was determined to build something new, something real. I started meeting up with friends again. I reconnected with old colleagues I hadn't seen in years. People I had isolated myself from when I'd been wrapped up in Madison's world. It felt like waking up from a long, disorienting sleep. I'd been so focused on the marriage, so consumed by the idea of fixing things, that I'd forgotten what it was like to just live. One evening, I was out with a group of friends at a local bar, trying to let loose after a long week of work. I was sitting back, enjoying the simple pleasure of a good drink and good conversation, when I noticed someone across the room. She was sitting at the bar, laughing with a few friends, her presence magnetic. I wasn't sure what drew me to her at first, but then she turned and caught my gaze. There was no awkwardness, no immediate desire to jump into something. Just curiosity. It wasn't love at first sight, not even close. But there was a moment, just a moment, where I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was ready to be open to the idea of something real again. Maybe, after all the pain, I could trust myself to love again. Not to replace what I had with Madison, but to create something entirely new. As I got up to grab another drink, she caught my eye again, this time with a smile that seemed to say she had noticed me too. And in that brief moment, I realized that while I wasn't actively seeking a relationship, I had stopped shutting myself off from the possibility. Over the next few weeks, we bumped into each other a few more times. We started chatting, just casual small talk at first. Her name was Lauren. She was confident, self-assured, and genuinely kind. It felt good to talk to someone who wasn't wrapped up in the chaos of my past. Someone who didn't know who I used to be, who didn't come with baggage. We began hanging out more, going for walks, grabbing coffee, talking about everything and nothing. There was no pressure, no rush. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but I was beginning to realize that maybe it was time to allow myself to open up again, to experience connection, not as an escape from the past, but as a healthy part of moving forward. With every conversation, every laugh shared, I felt like I was letting go of another piece of the pain I'd been holding on to. And that was the beauty of it. It wasn't about finding someone to fill a void left by Madison. It was about discovering that I was whole on my own, that I could be happy, independent, and yes, even open to love again, without losing who I was in the process. Lauren was patient. She understood when I pulled away, when I wasn't ready to dive into anything serious. She never pushed me. She gave me space to be myself, to heal. And in a way, that's exactly what I needed. I didn't know where things would go with her. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't care. I wasn't trying to force anything. I was just letting life unfold, letting the pieces fall into place. If it led somewhere, then great. If not, I'd still be okay. I was no longer defined by my past, by the mistakes I'd made, or by the person I used to be. I was just Ethan, a man learning to live again. And for the first time, I truly felt free. As the weeks turned into months, something incredible happened. I stopped looking over my shoulder. I stopped wondering if I was making a mistake. I stopped questioning if I was truly over Madison and everything she had done. There was a shift, a realization that I had fully let go. The past was just that, the past. And the weight of it no longer held me down. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe freely. I could wake up in the morning, look at myself in the mirror, and feel content. Not perfect, but content. I had rebuilt myself from the ruins, and that was enough. Lauren and I had continued seeing each other. At first, it had been slow, neither of us rushing into anything. But I had never experienced anything like it before. There was no rush, no expectations. Just two people enjoying each other's company. It was refreshing, grounding. We spent lazy afternoons at parks, long conversations over coffee, late-night walks under the stars. She was easy to talk to, genuine, with a lightness about her that made me forget, even for a moment, all the hurt I'd been through. And the best part was, she never tried to fix me. She never asked me to forget my past or who I was because of it. She accepted me as I was, flaws and all. I think that's when I realized something. I wasn't broken anymore. I didn't need someone to save me, and I didn't need to be fixed. I had been the one to put the pieces back together. I had healed, piece by piece, and the cracks, well, they were just a part of me now. They didn't define me. They made me stronger. But even with all this progress, there were still moments. There were still nights where I would wake up, the remnants of dreams where Madison's voice echoed in my mind. I still felt a ghost of the betrayal, a tiny sting that would flare up when I least expected it. And I knew that would never fully go away. But it was different now. It didn't consume me. It didn't control me. One afternoon, Lauren and I were sitting on a bench in a park, the sun beginning to dip behind the horizon. We'd been talking about everything and nothing, just enjoying the comfort of each other's company. And then she did something unexpected. She reached over, gently took my hand, and said something that caught me off guard. "You know," she started, her voice soft, "I admire you. A lot of people would have let what happened to you tear them apart. But you didn't. You're still standing. You're still you." I wasn't sure how to respond. I could feel the weight of her words, the sincerity in them. She didn't know the half of it. She didn't know the anger I'd fought, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, the days when I thought I would never find my way out of the darkness. But she was right. I had stood, and I was still me. "I'm just learning to live again," I said quietly, squeezing her hand gently. One step at a time. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for saying it. I didn't feel like I was lying, pretending to be someone I wasn't. I wasn't living in the shadow of my past anymore. I wasn't trying to pretend like everything was fine, like the betrayal didn't still hurt sometimes. I was just moving forward. That night, when I got home, I stood in front of the mirror again. I didn't recognize the man I had been a year ago. The man who had been devastated, lost, grasping for anything that would make the pain stop. That man had died, and in his place, someone stronger, more resilient had emerged. Someone who wasn't afraid to love again, to open up, and to trust. I wasn't healed because I had someone new in my life. I was healed because I had learned to love myself again, to forgive myself for staying too long, for ignoring the signs. I had learned that no one else could complete me. I had to complete myself. And that was the most freeing realization of all. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked at the caller ID and saw it was from the lawyer handling my divorce. For a moment, I hesitated, unsure of what to expect. I hadn't thought about Madison in weeks, but this was a part of my past that had to be wrapped up. I picked up the phone, took a deep breath, and listened as the lawyer explained the final steps of the divorce. It was all coming to an end, legally and emotionally. The paperwork would be finalized within the next few days. And that was it. The last loose thread was being tied up. When I hung up the phone, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But it wasn't the weight of the marriage or the betrayal. It was the weight of the uncertainty. For so long, I had been stuck, unsure of where I was headed. But now, I knew exactly who I was. And I was going to keep moving forward. I walked out onto the balcony, staring out at the city lights. I had come so far. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free.